Hey guys, welcome to another Pagan Happy Hour. And how are you all doing today? Happy Friday, everyone. I am so excited to have you guys join me for another edition of Pagan Happy Hour. This one's going to be a real fun one. I even got a little dressed up for the occasion. So we are going to be diving into Lupercalia, which is one of the origins of modern day Valentine's Day. But before we jump into all that, I just want to give you guys a big welcome. I'd love to hear from you in the chat where you're from and what you're drinking today. So I made myself a special mezcal margarita with fresh lime juice. So really excited for this. It tastes pretty good. And like always, I will be looking at your comments as we're moving along. So feel free to chime in. I'm going to bring you guys into the conversation and we're going to have a good time. Let's see. I see you guys chiming in from all over. I see Illinois, upstate New York, North Hollywood, Pennsylvania, Las Vegas, Australia, Florida, Canada, Virginia, Poland, Milwaukee, Washington, British Columbia, Connecticut. So, wow, you guys are really from all over, which is wonderful. And thank you guys so much for joining me. It is Friday, 5 o'clock here in Central Time, and I'm sure there are many places you could have chosen to be, but you chose to hang with the Pagan fam. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, so we're going to talk a bit about Valentine's Day because it is around the corner. It is a bit of a strange Valentine's Day this year. I'm probably just going to be staying in for the holiday. Personally, it's never been one of my favorite holidays. It is a bit too kind of commercialized and Hallmark-esque in my opinion. I'd love to hear in the comments what you think about Valentine's Day. Do you celebrate Valentine's Day? Do you try to ignore it? Do you hate Valentine's Day? I'd love to hear from you guys, your thoughts on that. And then we're going to jump into some pagan origins behind this particular holiday. Let me take a sip here. Let's see, looking at your comments here. Thomas says, yes, the best day to be a single Pringle. That's a really cute comment. I see the Green Knight says that they like Valentine's Day. Sid Ray says, I make heart pancakes for my kids, but that's about it. Heart pancakes are a super cute idea for this day. Let's see, Wednesday Robinson says that they love Valentine's Day. Corpse Edge says, not a huge fan of Valentine's Day. So I'm getting definitely a good variation of interest and dislike in this particular holiday from you guys, which makes sense. You know, it's kind of a meh holiday in my opinion, but hopefully as we're going through some of the pagan origins behind this holiday, it'll start to get a bit interesting. So we're mainly going to be talking about Lupercalia, though there may be some other kind of variations of origins behind this holiday, but we're going to focus on Lupercalia because in my opinion, that is the main inspiration for modern day Valentine's Day, and it's just a super bizarre and hilarious ancient pagan holiday, so I thought it'd be really fun to go over with you all. And this is a topic that I have covered previously in videos from like a year or so ago. I do have 2 videos I made about this topic linked below in the description. So after this, if you're wanting more details or images, things like that. You can find those in the description for this live. But yeah, so let's jump into it. And I'm going to be looking at your comments, so feel free to keep commenting, and I'll try and bring you in as much as possible. I see right away Tasha has a question about doing more Roman pagan videos in the future. I definitely hope to. I've been spending a lot of time lately on Norse paganism and Celtic paganism, but I do really love Roman paganism as well. I am a bit of an eclectic pagan, so even though I personally lean slightly towards the Norse and Celtic paths, I love ancient Rome and ancient Greece. There's so much wisdom there that we can draw upon. And what makes it so unique is we have so many written records and we have so many archaeological sites. So we actually know so much more about those cultures and how religion was practiced in those pagan societies versus a lot of them. So don't worry, I definitely will be making more videos about Roman and Greek paganism in the future. So we're going to talk about Lupercalia. It is an ancient Roman holiday. So it usually occurred between February 13th and 15th. So it does fit at the exact point basically where we celebrate modern Valentine's Day on the 14th. And even though this holiday did eventually gain associations with fertility and love and romance, it actually began as a festival to celebrate the founding of Rome. So when you look at the term Lupercalia, that first part means wolf, right? So for Harry Potter fans, you might remember Remus Lupin, right? So that Lupin part is the wolf part. So Lupercalia, the Luper part, means wolf. So this is kind of a celebration of the wolf. And if you are familiar with Roman history, you know the mythology behind the city, where there were two twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were nursed and taken care of by a she-wolf. And they were the two kind of founders of Rome, though Romulus did kill Remus, which is why the city is called Rome and not Reem. It's a really great story, and it's so fun that the city itself kind of has its own mythos and its own origin story. So this holiday was really kind of to celebrate and honor the origin story behind the city of Rome. And Rome itself is nicknamed the Eternal City. It really is a magical place, in my opinion. I did get the chance to visit Rome, I think 2 years ago, and explore the catacombs and some of the archaeological sites, and it is just such a wonder. So I love thinking about this holiday and thinking about how it might have been celebrated in ancient Rome. And we do actually know quite a bit about how this particular holiday was celebrated. So it began with two groups of priests. So these two groups were set up where one group was supposedly descended from Romulus, and one group of priests were supposedly the descendants of Remus. If that's actually true or not, it's probably not. But anyway, that's what they were claiming. So you'd have these two groups of priests, and they would meet inside a cave in within Palatine Hill, I believe. And before the main festivities would get started with these two priests, there was, of course, a lot of feasting and drinking to be had. Because this was, in general, a multi-day festival, that means people would be hanging out with their friends, people would be feasting, people would be having a good time, people would be a little bit drunk probably by the time they made it to that cave in Palatine Hill, which is real classic for really any pagan holidays. Most of them are surrounded by feasting and drinking. Speaking of which, I'm going to have another sip here while I check your comments. Oh, I see. Thomas has a great comment. He says, supposedly archaeologists have found the exact cave. That's awesome. And how fun would it be to visit that actual cave, right? And to kind of celebrate your own Lupercalia. One of the things that I love to think about our pagan community someday, which honestly is probably not going to happen, but we do have so many pagan sites that are usually designated like World Heritage Sites. And so people aren't really able to access those ancient sites. But who knows, maybe as more and more people become pagan, groups will be able to petition to actually use these ancient sites as locations for ceremony and ritual. I mean, think about how amazing that would be, especially in a city like Rome. Can you imagine the pagans getting back the Pantheon, which is one of the most beautiful historic structures in downtown Rome and is now currently a church. But I would love for pagans to get that building back one day and to be able to host ritual there. But anyway, so back to our two groups of priests. So they've arrived in the cave in Palatine Hill after a bit of feasting and drinking. Now this is when some sacrifices are going to be made. You might get a little squeamish with this part, but when you look historically, sacrifices of animals were a huge part of ancient paganism, especially in ancient Rome. As modern pagans, we don't need to do that, but we don't want to pretend that history didn't exist. So for this particular holiday, they would sacrifice some goats, and then they would also sacrifice one dog. Before you get like super upset, I'm pretty sure this is the only ancient Roman festival where a dog would be sacrificed. And the purpose of sacrificing the dog is because it was a stand-in for the she-wolf that cared for Romulus and Remus. So the priests would then collect the blood from the sacrificed dog, and they would also collect goat's milk from those goats, and then they would of course also process the goats so that they could be used for the feast later on, and a few other things that we'll get to. So the people would line up, and they would put the sacrificial blood on their forehead and then wash it away with the goat's milk. So the washing away of the blood was meant to symbolize kind of an ending of the feud between Romulus and Remus. So kind of an ending of the violence that led to the foundation of Rome, and kind of a fresh start for the empire, the republic. I see in your comments, the Magnus asks, so they still ate the animal that they sacrificed? Yes, usually animals in ancient Rome that were sacrificed were still eaten. So, meat was very expensive. Animals took a lot of resources and time to care for. So usually when animals were sacrificed, it's not like they just let the body, go to waste. They, processed the meat and ate it. And during big festivals like that, they would usually be distributing it to all of the citizens. So after they wash away the sacrificial blood representing the ending of the feud between Romulus and Remus, this is where it gets really weird. So we're going to get into that. Let me take another sip. Things are about to get very strange for this festival. So the next thing the two groups of priests do, they take the sacrificial goats and the hides of the goats, and then they make these kind of like light whips from the hides. And then they take these whips that they've created from the goat hides, they get naked, and they run through the streets of Rome, casually like whipping the citizens. Now, I should right away say this isn't like an angry type of like whipping. This is like a haha, I got you kind of a whipping. And in fact, it was considered to be really good luck to get whipped by the goat hides from the naked priests, especially for women who wanted to give birth. So this is where we're starting to see some tie-ins with fertility and romance. So women would jump into the street and try and get like kind of like spanked by these whips to ensure that they would be fertile. And yeah, so it's kind of crazy. And one of the fascinating things about this is a tradition that is still kind of done in certain parts of Central and Eastern Europe. I discovered this when I was living in Prague, and around the time of Ostara, or Easter time, so a little bit after Lupercalia, you could buy these kind of whips made out of reeds and flowers. And it was traditional for the boys to buy one and kind of like go after their girls and like chase the girls around with them. And likewise, it was kind of a way to like bring fertility in, you know, to celebrate the return of the fertility of the earth, and also to bring fertility to the women. So I think there are kind of variations of this tradition still happening in kind of Central and Eastern Europe. Though if any of you are from, you know, those countries and know more about that particular tradition, let me know, because I don't know as much. But so yeah, kind of a strange direction to take the festival in. But like I said, these were meant to be big feasts where everyone was drinking, and of course, you know, things are getting a little out of hand, like many pagan festivals in ancient times. So yeah, so after, you know, they were running through the streets, whipping all the people, everyone's having a good time, that's basically the end of the main festivities of Lupercalia. It also became one of the most loved holidays among the ancient Romans, and it even survived after the Western Roman Empire fell. So it really made a mark, I guess, on the people. They really loved it. They really thought it was a lot of fun, and they really loved honoring the founding of the great city of Rome. And it did eventually come to an end, as all good things do. It came to an end in the 5th century, so this is after most of Rome had been converted to Christianity. A pope, I believe it was Pope Gelasius at the time, he banned the festival due to the nakedness and drunkenness of the festivities. And then he created a new Christian holiday to replace the pagan holiday. So the new Christian holiday was a much more kind of somber occasion. It was called the Festival of the Purification of the Virgin Mary. So kind of the exact opposite of what Lupercalia was. But even though it did kind of eventually stop being widely celebrated after the 5th century, I do think it is quite telling that we celebrate our own Valentine's Day on the exact same date, basically, as ancient Romans celebrated their holiday of Lupercalia. So that's kind of a snapshot on what Lupercalia was, how it evolved, how it started as a holiday to remember Romulus and Remus and the founding of Rome, how it eventually got, kind of crazy and fun and became more about fertility, and then eventually how it was phased out when Christianity took over and that holiday was transformed into a separate Christian holiday. And now today we celebrate Valentine's Day, which, is named after Saint Valentine. But Saint Valentine didn't really have much to do with love and romance. So in my opinion, the kind of aspects of Valentine's Day, the love, the romance, the sexiness, that's more so tied to perhaps the ancient Roman holiday of Lupercalia. So what are your thoughts on that kind of holiday, on that story, on how it was celebrated in ancient Rome? Let me know your thoughts. I'm going to take a second here and read your comments and have a sip of my margarita. and yeah. I see there's a comment here from Rich, who says, I lived in the Czech Republic as well for a bit, and yeah, people would go door to door, playfully whipping people while reciting a poem. Kind of reminds me of the Mari Lwyd tradition in Wales. Yeah, that is super interesting, and I'd love to know what poem they would say. And the Mari Lwyd tradition in Wales, I really wanted to do a whole video on that during this last kind of Yule season. I'm definitely going to tackle it next Yule because it's super fascinating. I did kind of touch on it a little bit in my wassailing video, but I definitely want to talk more about the Mari Lwyd tradition in Wales. Let's see. Let me check your comments here. I see a comment here about how pagans had fun consensual whipping and Christians took it another way. Yeah, definitely. It makes me think of like certain sects of Christianity, like Opus Dei, that would whip themselves, or scourging, is that what they call it, to kind of get the sin out? Seems a little silly, not as fun as the pagan version. Let's see. Let me check your comments here. I think they even did mention Lupercalia in the new version of Sabrina. They had a festival for Lupercalia in one of their seasons. So that's kind of neat too that they brought that in. I see Tasha says you should try to make Lupercalia an American holiday. I wish. That would be super fun. There is a festival or a parade in New Orleans. I think it's called the Running of the Bulls, where people, it's kind of like roller derby style, where people will wear roller skates and all red, and they kind of run around trying to whip people. Kind of seems like a modern version of this in some ways. Let's see. Just checking your comments here. Yeah, I don't know that much about Saint Valentine. I probably should have looked into him more. Feel free to add the comments if you know anything about him. I think there was a comment about him a little bit earlier here. Graves says, wasn't the myth of Saint Valentine that he married people against Roman social rules? I think that is true. I think there is something to that. Let's see here. Let's see, Draven, in talking about the New Orleans kind of version of this holiday, it says, leave it to New Orleans, probably the most pagan city in the US. Yes, I love New Orleans. I've been trying to move there forever, but it's definitely on my list of places I would love to live. Victoria is adding something here about St. Valentine. She says, I read St. Valentine's Day feast was set on February 14th to honor St. Valentine, who was imprisoned by the Romans for ministering to Christians. That's probably true, but who knows? Let's see. Great comments, guys. This is, of course, just one of the many pagan holidays that are associated with themes like fertility, the renewal of spring. We do have Ostara coming up, so I'll probably do an Ostara party version of Pagan Happy Hour somewhat soon. And our modern Eastern traditions are mostly based on Ostara and other kind of pagan spring fertility festivals. So fertility and love are something that's very much tied to many pagan festivals, in fact. So that's something you'll see a lot. Let's see. Madison is asking, is the Lupercalia and Sabrina accurate? Not really. I don't think it was necessarily like based on the historical Lupercalia. They probably just took the fertility aspect of it or the sexy aspect of it and brought it into the show. Let's see. Wednesday is mentioning how the new version of Sabrina doesn't really portray the pagans well. Yes, definitely agree. I did do a whole video on the new version of Sabrina and some of the interesting things they brought into the show that do have pagan origins, and I did definitely talk about how they portrayed paganism in that particular show. Let's see. Oh, I see some more comments here on the history of Saint Valentine. So from Victoria, she's mentioning how Emperor Claudius II decided that single men made better soldiers and that those with wives and families. So he outlawed marriage for young men so they could focus on being soldiers and not get distracted by their wives and families. But Valentine realized the injustice of this decree, defied Claudius, and continued to perform marriages for young lovers in secret. Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds probably right. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, definitely there were not, that many good Roman emperors, There were some great ones. My personal favorite is Marcus Aurelius, but there were a lot of bad ones too. Let's see. Okay, so I also wanted to talk a bit about Valentine's Day, or kind of how you can bring this into your own pagan celebrations or your own decoration. One of the things I love to do each year is really pay attention to the seasons and the holidays and decorate my altar around those specific holidays and the seasonal changes. One of the things I love to do is use natural materials. So instead of buying a bunch of stuff from like made in China, I try and just go for a nature walk and see what happens to be growing in my local area. Unfortunately, this year, even here in Texas, we are experiencing the polar vortex, which is insane. I was living in Chicago. This is my first year living in the South. I've been living in Chicago for the past 6 years, and before that I lived in Wisconsin and upstate New York. So I'm kind of annoyed it's getting all the way down to 0 down here. So when I went on my nature walk to find some items for my altar to celebrate Valentine's Day, I couldn't really find much. But that's okay. You can really just use whatever you do find, even if it's still kind of wintry plants and things like that. Of course, if you do have any stones or crystals, rose quartz is a lovely one to put on your altar. This is a great time to do any type of love spells or glamour magic if you're into witchcraft. And another thing I always put on my altar is some tarot cards that I connect with the particular holiday. So there's a few different cards that I like to connect with Valentine's Day or Lupercalia. The main one I would probably say is Two of Cups. And I usually will take a couple tarot cards and just kind of put them on my altar as kind of stand-ins or representations of different things. So the Two of Cups here, this is a pretty simple version of it. This is from the deck I designed with my friend, the Key Tarot, and you can see a couple cheersing here, as well as the intertwined snakes. So the intertwined snakes are a reference to the Rider-Waite version that has the caduceus. But I think it does also fit in well here as kind of a romantic symbol. Now, when you think about tarot, and something like Valentine's Day or romance, you're probably thinking of the Lover's card. And the Lover's card is a great one to represent this particular holiday of Lupercalia. However, there's a big difference between these two cards. They're both about partnership. They're both often about relationships. The Lover's is about that initial spark, that initial lust. You can even see the trees on fire there in the background, that happens in a new relationship. So it indicates that you're feeling really connected with someone physically, emotionally, but it doesn't necessarily represent commitment or long-term relationship potential. That's what the Two of Cups represents. This is kind of like the engagement or the marriage card or the moving in together card. This is the one that represents people are ready to take the relationship to the next level. So if you're ever doing any tarot magic or something like that and you're wanting your partner to speed things along or to be more committed, this would be a good card to use in any particular spell. Or if you're just wanting more passion, this one would work. The last card I thought I would share is if you absolutely hate Valentine's Day. I have the Three of Swords here from the deck, the Key Tarot, and this card is kind of all about recovering from heartbreak. Even though we all go through really difficult experiences emotionally in our life and past relationships that have ended, this card reminds us that the heart is still strong and it can always recover. So put this one on your altar if you're needing a little release of past heartbreaks and you're wanting to kind of move forward. So these are three cards I would recommend if you are wanting to bring in a bit of tarot magic or just kind of place something on your altar. Of course, you don't need to use the specific cards that I picked here or the cards from my deck, though, of course, I do have the link down below if you'd like a copy. I do have another tarot deck that I wanted to recommend because it's very tongue-in-cheek. And this is not a deck I created. This is called the Eros deck, and it's by a design company called Uzi. It's kind of like inappropriate, so I can't show you all the cards, but you can kind of see there's like a lot of like kind of nudity in the cards. It's very fun. It's very like tongue-in-cheek. So this is a really kind of fun deck if any of you are interested in doing tarot readings that are associated with love or passion, anything like that. So this is the Eros deck, and I definitely would recommend it for readings like that. So let me check your comments here. Let's see. Graves is mentioning how Eros is the Greek love of passion. Yeah, it's a deity, I believe, right? Eros? Ashley is saying that she loves my tarot deck. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. Let's see. Michelle says that she has the Sensual Wicca tarot cards and that they have a similar art style. That's cool. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, let me see. Let me check your comments here. Let's see. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for commenting and sharing your thoughts. And at this point, feel free to type in any questions. We pretty much went over everything that I wanted to cover for Lupercalia. So any questions you have for me, we still got a few more minutes. I still got about half my drink here to finish. And I'd be more than happy to answer. I see Sarah is asking what I think about the concept of the mind witch, as Jessie Huntenberg called herself. So if you hadn't seen, I did a fun interview with Jessie Huntenberg a couple of weeks ago and her philosophy of being a mind witch. And I really like that concept. I don't have a specific title for myself and my own kind of witchcraft practice, but I love her idea of the mind witch, kind of using our mind or understanding that our mind is really the essential tool to performing any type of manifestation. Let me see here. Mark has a great question. Is paganism more of a spirituality or a religion? Great question. I don't have a good answer for that. I think it can be whatever you'd like it to be. It depends. Some people are really into honoring the gods, give offerings regularly, do pagan prayer, rituals, and that to me seems more religious. There's also a lot of people who treat paganism as kind of like a lifestyle, in which case it might be more just kind of a spirituality. More so treating paganism like a great way to recognize the divinity in nature, great way to honor the cycles of the seasons, to honor ancient wisdom. And that might just be kind of more of a spirituality than a like religion. So it really depends on what direction you want to take your pagan path in and how you want to integrate it into your life. That's a great question, though. Let's see. Alice is asking if I have books suggestions about the holidays. So there are quite a few books that are written about the Wiccan Wheel of the Year. And I do have like one or two of those, but honestly, I find that books that focus on the Wiccan Wheel of the Year don't dive deep enough into the origins behind the modern day Wiccan celebrations. So I actually just do online research. So for example, when I was first learning about Lupercalia, I just went online and read articles on what it was about, and figured it out from there. So a lot of times when you're looking at more historical approaches to paganism, you're going to have to rely on a lot of articles and online research. A lot of stuff is in academic papers, or, you know, picking up a book about ancient Rome. And that can kind of really help you understand these holidays in context. Or if you're studying a different pagan path, picking up a book on, you know, the Viking Age, if you're interested in Norse paganism or something like that. So yeah, it's kind of tricky. There's not really any great book that I would recommend about pagan holidays because it really depends on what holidays you're wanting to learn from and what culture that holiday originates in. Let's see. I see a comment here kind of going back to the idea of is paganism more spirituality or religion? Let's see. Veggie Stan says, I think of witchcraft as spiritual and paganism as a religion. That's a great point. I don't view witchcraft as a religion. It can be, like Wicca, for example, I would consider a religion. But in general, I think witchcraft is a practice. It's something that is done. It's something you do. It's like a verb. Whereas paganism is a bit more expansive and deals more with belief than necessarily stuff you do. But it really is so varied and up to how you would like to take your particular beliefs. Let's see. I'm just checking your comments here. Let's see. Light of Belenis is asking about, since I mentioned Wisconsin and that I went to college in Wisconsin, where I went and what I studied. So I went to a small liberal arts college called Beloit, and I studied art history and Asian studies. I do not recommend doing what I did. As much as I loved college, like seriously, best 4 years of my life, going to a small liberal arts school was wonderful, but not very practical in terms of career opportunities, and studying art history and Asian studies, likewise, not a good idea in terms of career opportunities. But I did create my own career through this, so it all worked out in the end. Let's see. Ashley is asking, do you have any good tips for practicing in secret? She really wants to start a pagan practice, but her mother is very religious. Yeah, I think you can definitely do that. And I did practice in secret back when I was in high school for the most part. And so you don't necessarily need to have an altar that's up all the time. I personally use a bookshelf where I have kind of all my altar items, but when I'm actually doing a ritual, or if I'm doing like a spell or something like that, I'll bring certain items down that I know that I'll need. So for example, you could have some candles or a deck of cards or tarot cards or something like that, and then kind of put it away somewhere, but then just bring it out and do a ritual right on your bedroom floor with, a couple items. And that's what I used to do. You don't really need to have a specific space set up. You don't need to have a permanent altar space. You don't need to wear any particular pagan jewelry or dress in any particular way. Even just going on walks alone and using that as a time to connect with the nature spirits, with the gods, that's a great way to celebrate paganism, and no one's going to know what you're doing. So, yeah, let's see. Gigi is asking, did you hide your religion from your loved one when you first met / started dating? Not really. My now husband kind of always knew that I was into this kind of stuff, that I was pagan. It didn't really cause any issues. We dated for like 8 or 9 years before we got married. So he was fully aware of my life and what I believe. And luckily it didn't generate any big issues or anything like that, because he is agnostic. He's not really interested in spirituality or religion. So he just kind of supported me for my own beliefs. But yeah, so it sometimes can be tricky if your partner is Christian, might have some issues with that, or maybe their parents would have some issues if they found out. But I feel like more and more, there's tons of people out there who have left the faith that they grew up in and are like agnostic or even atheist. And I find most agnostics or atheists don't really have an issue with pagans. So yeah, it all worked out for me, but I know it can be tricky for a lot of other couples. Let's see, I see another comment here about the idea of practicing in secret. Let's see, Veggie Stan says, the internet is great for someone practicing in secret too. If you can't buy books, a lot of the info these days can be found online. Yes, definitely. You can find tons of resources online, even if you're just starting with reading Wikipedia. It's a great place to start. And on YouTube. I mean, I'm just one of like hundreds or even thousands of YouTubers talking about these topics. So there is so much free information out there that you can find online, and you don't even have to buy any books. I mean, it's great to, of course, read books, but if you can't, there's a lot of great info online. I do have a video that I did maybe like a couple months ago, which is titled something like 5 Tips for Leaving the Broom Closet. So that video is all about kind of coming out as a pagan or a witch when you're ready. So some tips with that. Let's see. Andrea has an interesting question. She asks, how do you feel about Christians adopting pagan practices? I feel like with the rise of Instagram, I see so many Christians using pagan or witchcraft practices. Yeah, you know, it's kind of interesting. There's different ways people go about it. On the one hand, Christians celebrate like Christmas, and all of the symbolism and all the fun aspects of Christmas are basically pagan. So Christians have been technically celebrating pagan holidays for a long time, or something like Easter, where it's like it's basically a pagan holiday of fertility. All the symbolism, the bunnies, the eggs, it's all about fertility. So they might be Christian, but they're celebrating all the symbols that are referencing the ancient pagan holiday. So that's kind of something that's been happening. Though you also have kind of a contingent of people who are Christian, but then kind of dive into more like new agey things like crystals and stuff like that. I don't really care too much, you know, if they want to do whatever they want to do. It doesn't really bother me. I just find it kind of amusing. But yeah, so a lot of Christians do kind of celebrate pagan things without realizing that they are pagan. Let me see. Checking your comments here. Sarah has a question about creating your own pantheon. So that kind of depends. Like, some people are considered eclectic pagans, where they will pull from different pantheons. So they might work with deities from like the Roman pantheon, and then maybe like the Norse pantheon, or they might pull those pantheons together. In that case, I think it can work. It depends. It's trickier to do that, I think, than focusing on one particular pantheon, but it's definitely possible. In terms of just kind of like creating everything kind of from whatever you want to make up, I wouldn't recommend doing that. I think one of the things that makes paganism so amazing and unique is that it is based in ancient cultures and ancient wisdom. So if you create everything new from scratch and you don't incorporate any of the traditions or the philosophies or the beliefs from these ancient sources, then I think you're kind of missing the main point of paganism. But that's a great question. Let's see. Let's see, just checking your comments here. Wednesday is saying Thanksgiving is the only non-pagan holiday. I actually did a video about Thanksgiving this year where I do draw some comparisons. They are not quite as tight as some other holidays, but I do even think there are pagan influences in Thanksgiving, so you can check that out in case you're curious. I see a question here. Do you consider New Agers pagans? I personally do not. I'm definitely not really a New Ager. Personally, I think there is some overlap, like the interest in crystals, or even like yoga and things like that. Which I don't mind crystals. I'm not like a crystal collector, and I definitely do yoga from time to time, but I wouldn't consider myself a New Ager. Let's see. Just checking your comments here. I'm just gonna have another sip of my drink. I see a great comment here. Gizmo is saying, I'm just getting into tarot and still deciding if I want to read reversals. I remember you saying in a video you don't read reversals, and I was just wondering your reasoning for not. So if you're unfamiliar with tarot cards, you can shuffle them in different ways, right? So if you're doing like a Go Fish style shuffle, where all the cards are on the table and you're kind of going like this, and then you gather them back together, and then you flip them over, some of them are going to be facing you and some of them are going to be reversed. So if it's reversed, that is called a reversal. And often tarot readers will read reversals or interpret them in a different way. There's different ways to read reversals. Some people view it as kind of a negative expression of the card's meaning. Some people view it as kind of representing energy that's internal versus external. There's different ways, people read reversals. But for me, I don't read reversals. So when I shuffle like a traditional playing card deck. So when all my cards are shuffled and together, they're all going to end up kind of facing the correct way, facing me. And the reason I don't read reversals is because I believe that within each tarot card, there is both a positive and a negative aspect to the card's meaning. And I would rather use my intuition when I flip over the card and see, how do I feel about this card? Which aspect of the card's meaning do I want to bring out and talk about? Because each card can mean several different things, some good, some bad. So I like to use my intuition because it's a good practice for my intuition, because sometimes when you know the card meanings, you don't want to just flip it over and be like, okay, this card means blah, 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 because you memorized it. You want to really kind of feel it too. And because I don't read reversals, I'm not going to automatically know if it's like a positive or negative spin for the card's meaning. I have to trust my gut instincts and what the card is trying to tell me. So that is why I don't personally read reversals, though it is up to you. I am thinking about doing some tarot workshops soon. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. So yeah, tarot is probably one of my main passions. Let's see. Let me check your comments here. Great comments. I see a comment here, bringing it back to Lupercalia. Light of Belena says, I think it would be interesting to talk about how paganism tends to be sex positive as opposed to other religions that cast shame on normal human behavior. Yeah, I think that is true. One of the things that probably initially drew me towards paganism when I was younger is that there wasn't a component of shame in pagan societies, especially when it came to female sexuality and female bodies. I mean, there is definitely a lot of caveats to that. Life as a woman in ancient Rome wasn't exactly great. But in general, the fact that there are goddesses in these ancient cultures represent to me that, the female was really valued. And then on top of that, a lot of pagan festivities are about celebrating our humanness and our human bodies, whether that's through feasting or drinking or sexy time, and I think that's a good thing. One of the main differences for me between paganism and a lot of the Abrahamic religions is I find the Abrahamic religions either try to ignore the body or view the body as somehow sinful or something that needs to be controlled and contained. Whereas in pagan societies, the body was honored and respected for what it is and was celebrated. You can even think about the ancient Greeks and the creation of the Olympics, the desire to celebrate what the height of the body could be, how strong and powerful our bodies could be, how beautiful and wonderful it can be to be in a healthy body. So for me personally, my version of pagan faith also involves trying to be healthy and doing fitness and eating healthy and things like that, because I love the idea that with paganism, we're trying to celebrate how wonderful our bodies can be and the amazing things they do for us. And we're not finding shame or embarrassment in them at all. So great question. And that really is one of the main reasons I think paganism resonates with me, because I like to celebrate the earth and ourselves as we are and not find shame or sin in our bodies. Yeah, that was a great question. But let me see here. Great comments and great questions. Let's see, Wednesday Robinson is also saying, I also love that there is no shame. All our feelings and emotions are to be celebrated. That's another thing that's great too when you think about the gods and goddesses in the different pantheons. Like us, they have emotions. They have all of the emotions, right? And they're not perfect. They're not this untouchable deity that's, omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipowerful. They are grounded in experiences that we can relate to, because the different deities have an emotional spectrum. They are like us, and we are in a way like them. So there's even like this idea that there's like an aspect of the divine within us, or there's an aspect of us within the divine, because we have that connection and we have that ability to experience many emotions and treat that as a spiritual essence if we want to. So yeah, great questions. Let's see. One other question here. Do you ever wonder why all three major monotheistic religions come from the exact same place in the Middle East? Great question. I mean, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism all come from the Middle East. I don't know why. You could think of it as that is considered to be the cradle of civilization, right? Because between the Tigris and Euphrates, you have the earliest civilizations in the ancient Near East. You have you have Persepolis, you have Babylon, you have the Epic of Gilgamesh, the first novel. So agriculture, and eventually leading to kind of civilization, began in the Middle East. But of course, during that time, it was pagan. They had their own ancient like Sumerian deities and things like that, which are super fascinating. I would love to learn more about Middle Eastern pagan gods and goddesses. But yeah, it is kind of strange, because everything was pagan, and then all of a sudden you have these monotheistic religions pop up. Of course, they came out on different times, because Judaism came first, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 1,000 years later, Christianity, and then Islam didn't exist till around like 700 CE, and then they all kind of spread out from there to the rest of the world. But yeah, good question. I don't know. Let's see. Ted has a great comment on that about Zoroastrianism and how it was fused into Jewish mysticism and Judaism, and there were pseudo-monotheistic Ra cults in Egypt. The combination helped contribute to monotheism in the region. Great comment. That's really fascinating. Zoroastrianism is really neat. I did a video a while back on the ancient Persian god Mitra, and how it might have evolved into the ancient Roman deity of Mithras. And then also, yeah, you know, in ancient Egypt, they technically did briefly have a monotheistic religion when Akhenaten created the Aten disk, or the Aten deity, and kind of eliminated all the other Egyptian gods, though after he died, the priests reinstated the old religion. So it was a very short, brief monotheistic time in ancient Egypt. But yeah, that's super interesting. I definitely want to learn more about Zoroastrianism, as well as Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah and things like that. There's a lot of integration between Kabbalah and tarot. You do see a lot of Jewish references in the tarot deck as well, especially in cards like the High Priestess, where she's holding the Torah, or in the Wheel of Fortune, where you see the Hebrew letters of Yahweh. So a lot of interesting overlap there. Let's see. Great comments. But I think it's about time to sign off. It has been an hour. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me for this special Lupercalia edition of Pagan Happy Hour. Yeah, this has been really fun. I hope I was able to bring you guys into the conversation as much as possible. The comments do move pretty quick, so I try my best. And I do have a Discord update, so stay tuned. It'll probably be fully ready on Wednesday. I'm still working through a few last bugs and things like that. So if you are really enjoying Pagan Happy Hour and you're wanting a community that isn't just on Fridays at 5, but is all week long, stay tuned for an update. Probably next Wednesday, we will be fully good to go with that, and I'll be able to tell you more. But thank you guys so much. This was wonderful. Have a wonderful weekend, and cheers. I'll see you guys later. Bye.